Seasonal Guide to Gardening Activities. My name is Marnie McCracken. I work as a farm production extension specialist for Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development out of the Pas, Manitoba. Growing a garden can be an enjoyable pastime, and it can provide you and your family with fresh, delicious produce. However, if you're new to gardening, what needs to be done and when? There are generally 4 seasons to gardening. They are planning, the planting season, growing season, and a harvest and storage season. I should also note that there's lots of overlap between the seasons. For example, you may be planning and planting at the same time, or growing and harvesting at the same time. Once the snow hits the ground and temperatures drop, your outdoor gardening activities are over for the season, and it's time to look forward and start planning for the next year. It's time to read seed catalogs, like some of the ones pictured on the right that are Manitoba Seed Company catalogs. It's time to review what grew well last year, what didn't grow well. It's time to watch some gardening videos, to decide what new plants you might like to try, what vegetables you and your family like to eat, and so on. Also on the right is a picture of a Northern Healthy Foods Initiative resource manual, and I'll tell you at the end of the video where you can find more resources and materials that are specific to Northern Manitoba and Northern Manitoba growing conditions. This is the time of year to plan your vegetable garden, to draw up an actual plan of what you want to grow and where. For example, tall plants are best grown on the north side of the garden so they don't shade any lower growing ones. To plant short season crops next to vining or spreading types so that once you pick the short season ones, the vines have room to grow. This planting plan will help to figure out how much seed to buy, how much seed you might need. Once you've decided what you want to grow, order your seeds. Varieties that grow best under short season, long days with generally cool growing conditions are most successful in the north. March and April, this is the time to gather up supplies such as pots or flats for bedding plants, soil for planting, and then start the bedding plants. Bedding plants are those plants that take a long time to grow and produce, so they need to be started indoors. These are plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, celery, peppers, and other long season crops. You may also just choose to buy your bedding plants from a greenhouse. May is when you get the garden site ready for planting. Using a tiller or a shovel and garden fork, work the soil to a depth of 8 to 10 inches. Purchase any additional seeds or bedding plants you may need. When spring conditions allow soil tillage and seedbed preparation, plant these vegetable seeds outdoors as early as possible. Beets, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, kale, kohlrabi, lettuce, onion, parsley, parsnip, peas, radish, rutabaga, spinach, Swiss chard, and turnip. Those are all frost-tolerant hardy plants. Planting and seeding dates will vary depending on the weather in a given year and where you are located. Experienced gardeners are good sources of information as to when you can plant your garden and be safe from spring frost. As a general guide, depending on the spring, you can plant in late May or early June. In more northern areas such as Thompson, around June 10th is usually safe from frost. Farther north, you can usually seed by June 15th and frost is not an issue. Watch the weather for frost warnings and cover and protect bedding plants that are susceptible to frost through May and June. Plants can be protected using old sheets or blankets. They can be covered with a tunnel or, as pictured, protected using these reusable water-filled teepees that store heat during the day and protect your plants at night. Plastic tarps provide little insulation value against heavy frost and are not the best coverings for your garden. Continue planting fast-growing vegetables, and this will extend the growing season. Crops such as radish, lettuce, peas, beans, and spinach can be planted every 2 weeks until mid to late June to ensure a continuous supply of vegetables throughout the growing season. The garden needs about an inch of water every week. If you're not sure how much rain has fallen, or if you're not sure if you watered the garden enough, put a rain gauge in the garden to track the amount of moisture and dump the gauge out weekly. A rain gauge can easily be made from supplies around the house, as pictured. You do not have to water the entire garden, just the plant roots. A good soaking every 7 to 10 days is better than frequent light watering. Weed your garden and hill the potatoes. Hilling is a gradual process of building soil up into a hill around the potato plant to prevent the sunlight from greening any potatoes that form near the surface. Regularly weeding the garden is necessary, not just to make the garden look nice, but weeds are extra plants growing in the garden that crowd out the plants that you do want. They use up nutrients and water that the crop could be using. By removing the weeds, you remove the competition and the vegetables have better growing space. Stake plants up, such as peas and tomatoes, to keep them up off the ground. This solves a number of issues. It makes it easier to weed the rows. It's easier to pick the vegetables or walk between the rows. It keeps them out of the dirt and cleaner, and it also improves airflow, which reduces issues with diseases and insects. Those peas in the pictures, they're just some twigs and branches that are used to stake them up, and then some string. And the picture on the right is just some wire that is being used to stake up that tomato plant as it grows. Spend time in the garden and check for issues with insects and diseases during the growing season. If you check regularly, it's easier to deal with an issue right away before it gets out of hand. You can start harvesting and using your vegetables and garden produce as soon as they're ready. Peas and beans are ready nice and early. Pull a couple of carrots, onions, or radishes and see if they're big enough to start picking. For potatoes, anytime after the potato plant flowers, you can either pull up the whole plant and dig the potatoes, or as you're watching in the video, sneak some out from under different plants. Mound the dirt back up around the plant, and the potato plant itself can continue growing, and you have a nice feast of potatoes. Clean up last season's vegetables during the growing season. Clean them up out of the storage area, whether it's a root house or a space in the basement. This gets that space ready and the containers ready for when you'll be putting up the current year's harvest. You've spent all summer watering, weeding, encouraging growth. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Regularly pick and enjoy the summer's bounty. During September, watch the weather and if need be, protect frost-susceptible plants such as cucumbers and tomatoes from frost. Old sheets or blankets will work well to prevent those plants as you continue to pick and harvest your produce. As you harvest your plants, clean the debris off the garden and till the garden in preparation for spring planting. Removing debris and working your garden in the fall can help keep overwintering insects and egg laying as well as overwintering diseases to a minimum. It also makes the work more manageable and quicker in the spring. Remember to store some soil and planting pots where you can access them in the early spring for starting seeds indoors. Store and preserve vegetables and fruits to enjoy all winter. Whether it's frozen tomatoes, plums, raspberries, relishes, or pickles, preserving your harvest extends the time that you can eat and enjoy them. Through October, November, and December, check your stored vegetables for signs of spoilage and remove spoiled items such as rotten or moldy items so they do not affect the remainder of the produce. Enjoy stored vegetables in meals and snacks. Decide what you and your family like, and when planning for next year, include those vegetables in your plan. Here's a recap of what the gardening season looks like and the tasks that you might undertake as the seasons progress. For more information specific to Northern Manitoba growing and gardening, check out the Manitoba government website under Indigenous and Northern Relations. There are a number of resources listed there. As well, Manitoba Agriculture has a YouTube channel where videos are stored. We have a Northern Gardening playlist on the Manitoba Agriculture YouTube channel, and check that out.